Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today I am joined by the lovely Vance Row. Vance is a former law enforcement veteran with over 20 years of service down in Maryland, with both the Salisbury Police Department and most predominantly the Ocean City Police Department. He's currently switched roles into a dispatcher role for the police and fire service down at Ocean City there. He is a certified yoga instructor, and he's also the founder of Yoga Rescue, which is an organization that focuses on the practice used to combat mental health challenges and suicidality in the first responder and veteran communities, which works with combining a practice of breathwork, movement, and mindfulness. And Vance sort of discovered the practice of yoga and the benefits of it after his own mental health battles throughout the time of his career. He's also an instructor, or what is known as a guide, at Boulder Crest Foundation, which offers programs for military members, veterans, and the first responder community, focusing on post-traumatic growth. So there is a lot to get to. Vance, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks, Erin. I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. So we will sort of dive in from the get-go with your policing experience, if we can.
Sure.
And I'd love to hear what got you interested in a first responder career and in particular law enforcement.
So it's funny. There's a couple things that really stand out, and that was when I was I was probably in like middle school, and I remember being in like Cub Scouts, and we got a tour of the Baltimore County Police of the Woodlawn precinct, and I just was like, oh wow, this is super cool. And that was a busy precinct that they ran a lot of calls and stuff like that, and that was very close to where I lived at the time. The next thing is, and you'll laugh, everybody laughs. It's the middle of high school, and the movie The Fugitive comes out, and I was like, "Oh my God, I want to be Tommy Lee Jones, and I want to be a U.S. Marshal." So when I went to college, I actually started as a political science major, thinking that I was going to get into federal law enforcement.
Wow.
And then I started working in Ocean City after my freshman year. And I
Okay.
actually enjoyed the local municipality law enforcement. And I just never went any farther than that. So, like, when I left college, I decided I could have gone back to the Baltimore area where I'm from, or I could stay at the beach. And that's what I ended up doing. And here we are 25 years later.
Yeah. I mean, if given the choice, with I'm sure
Right.
you have beautiful beaches down there. It's
Yeah.
sometimes it's tough to make the break from something like that.
Right. My wife and I are definitely beach people. So
Yeah.
yeah, it worked out.
Oh, wonderful. And so you completed your time at college, and then I saw obviously you had like that involvement with Ocean City, but did you spend some time working at the Salisbury Police Department too?
Well, so I did. And so here's how that happens. Um, so I'm working every summer while I'm in college.
Oh,
And I
okay.
would and I would go then I would just go back to college in August every single summer. Um, and what Ocean City has, it's a little unique. And we had seasonal programs where we would hire college kids to come down and either be public safety aides or police
Oh,
officers for the summertime, because we
okay.
have a busy resort town and we just needed more help.
Yeah.
So
So
I was
not so much like a cadets program, but kind of like a,
well, I
you know.
was
Oh, okay.
when I was 19 and when I was 20, I was a cadet. And then when I turned 21, so that's the benchmark. You have to be 21 in order to carry a firearm. So
Right.
when I was 21, I became a seasonal police officer, and then
Mm-hmm.
so I did that for 3 summers, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually did my college internship with the Ocean City Police. So here's how I end up
Oh,
in
wow.
Salisbury.
Yeah.
So I had worked the summer of 2000 after graduating college in December of 99.
Mm-hmm.
And Ocean City, it was very difficult at the time to get hired there. They were hiring like one a year. And
Mm-hmm.
so I applied to a jurisdiction over, which was Salisbury, and that's about 30 miles outside of Ocean City. And I got
Mm-hmm.
hired. So I did my 6 months in the police academy. And then I worked 14 months on the road, so a total of just short of 2 years. And then
Mm.
as soon as I could, I went back to Ocean City, which and at that point I was a certified police officer, so that makes me
Okay.
even more marketable. That they don't
Yeah.
have to train me, and I had experience being an Ocean City police officer, so it was kind of like a no-brainer. There were two of us that
Yeah.
did that. We both went to Salisbury, got trained, and then we came back to Ocean City almost together.
Right. And so just like a nice, smooth sort of lateral transfer
Right,
and
right. Well,
happy days.
and I mean there was a pay raise too, and that
Hmm.
certainly didn't hurt. Um,
Yeah.
but that's where I wanted to be. So that was the summer of 2002 that I actually
Okay.
returned to Ocean City. Now this time as a full time police officer.
Hmm. Okay, wonderful. And obviously I, spend a little bit of time stalking, or
Okay,
investigating
that's all right.
my my upcoming guests and looking at your resume. Obviously you've done, like a significant time at Ocean City, was it like 20 years of service, which is, something to be said in itself, but the amount of different roles and positions and just kind of like aspects of policing that you were involved in over your time just
Yeah,
seems a
I got to
lot.
do a lot. I got to do a lot of cool things, and
Yeah.
I got to be a part of a lot of different specialties. And
Hmm.
very early on in my police career, I had police commanders coming to me and being like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to be a part of this?" And so almost simultaneously, I had the police department asking me to take this admin role where I would
Yeah.
do recruiting and backgrounds and training. So
Hmm.
not really. Look, I understand that there's a hiring process, but I never thought that I would be a person that was doing that. Like I signed up because I wanted to arrest people and I wanted to,
Yeah.
turn my lights and sirens on and run screaming the calls. I never thought about like doing the back end stuff,
Yeah.
but it turned out I was really good at it. And then
Hmm.
almost at the exact same time, the local fraternal order of police came to me and was like, "Hey, you'd be a good fit on the executive board. Are you interested?" I'm like, I am. And, on both of those jobs, I said yes before I even knew what the job was. I'm like, all right, whatever. I guess I'll figure it out. I'm a relatively smart kid.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, so, I did that for the next, I was on the executive board for 10 years, doing all kinds of different things. And then,
Hmm.
in the police department, so it was unique in the fact that because of my environment, because I worked in a resort town, so every
Yeah.
winter, so from like October to May, I would do that office job and I would spend a lot of time in college classrooms. I was part of testing these kids that would come down and wanted to be police officers and cadets. And then I would actually be part of their training program after I was part of their background process. So I literally was uh, almost like a friend from the time they came out of the classroom all the way through to the
Mm.
time that they were trained, and then we turned
Yeah.
them loose. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed teaching, and I just take a different approach, I think, to teaching.
Yeah.
And then every summer, I would actually go back and I would work patrol the same way as every other cop in Ocean
Hmm.
City, and I would typically work 5 and 6 nights a week, 5 or 6 10-hour shifts per week. So there was always a lot of overtime. My
Hmm.
my wife coined the term summer widow because, and it's sad, it's funny but sad, um,
Yeah.
because she would see me like the first week of May,
Hmm.
and then we would barely see each other until the middle of July, uh,
Yeah.
just because of the amount of overtime that I was making, and the paychecks were phenomenal.
Oh,
But
of course. Yeah. But
on the
you're not there to like enjoy it.
on the one day off that I would get,
Mhm.
I mean, I was asleep and
Yeah.
do a lot of laundry and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
those were tough, and I got to tell you that, and just talking to police officers now a lot, and just kind of in the role that I'm doing now, um, everybody kind of hits this wall that's somewhere between like 5 and 7 years in, where you're just kind of like, is this all there is? And is this what I signed up to do? Am I making impact? And I kind of
Mhm.
had that as well. And I felt like all I was doing was I was making 18-year-old kids dump out their beer So I was essentially ruining everybody's good time. I'm like, is this, like, I got into this because I wanted to uh, be a crime fighter. So I wanted to
Mm.
stop like serious crime, not
Yeah.
necessarily write people tickets for being underage and having beer.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's understandable.
yeah, yeah. So I was fortunate in the fact that I got to do some other things um, that translated later into my career from doing all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff and doing backgrounds is because of how many people that we had to hire every year. We decided that we were going to do our own polygraph um, program, and I actually was our
Yeah.
first to go to school, and I actually built our polygraph program, and that was now,
I saw that on your resume. I was
yeah,
like, "Ooh, that's
right.
something rather intriguing."
Yeah, so I went to school, and I go to school for 12 weeks, which it's the hardest stuff that I ever done academically.
Really?
And
Wow.
I mean, it's 12 weeks on an army base, and you go to school six
Hmm.
days a week.
Oof.
And
Yep.
so then I get all the training, and then I come back, and everybody else had like a mentor that they worked under. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't have anything like that. I guess like
Hmm.
I gotta figure this stuff out on my own. So I started
Yeah.
I actually was very fortunate that I met somebody who helped me, who was not in my agency. Um, but he was phenomenal.
Hmm.
And I worked with him for the next probably 9 years,
Hmm.
just doing different polygraph related things.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah, that's but that was where I just kind of translated some of that skill
Hmm.
and just some of my, I guess, curiosity and investigative know-how, and started to do really well in the polygraph world.
That's pretty crazy. But what I love is like I think as anyone who sort of was on the job as long as you and I didn't get sort of like anywhere near that long, but my hubby's like a 22-year, I think, firefighter, still active duty. And I think when we get on so long, like, you get the old crusty, like, people who not necessarily look down on like the newer recruits and stuff like that, but it's all like they're soft, they're this, they're that. It wasn't like that, in my day. But to actually have part of that implementation when, like, you're interviewing them and you're helping recruit them and you're helping teach them, like, I think there's something really wonderful. It's like, well, I'm helping shape these new people. I'm going to make it so they are good and they are decent. So all the ones that want to sit there and like bitch and moan about the new ones, well, like, I'm having input into what makes a good recruit from 10 years down the track from when you started your career. And I think that's like an element that is wonderful
Yeah,
and really valuable, that like that kind of, and even just kind of getting to know them as well. You know what I mean?
great,
Like, I
great.
think that's
I
awesome.
actually really liked that, and I really did. I liked the aspect of getting to know them as a person, not just as a public safety professional, either being a cadet or a officer. And I still keep up with quite a few of them, actually,
Hmm.
which is neat
Yeah.
because when they leave Ocean City, because we can't hire them all, not on a full
Yeah.
time basis, it's really neat to see them go and flourish wherever it
Hmm.
is they go, and they go like across the nation, they go across the world. And I try to keep up with as many as I can on like Facebook and LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's super cool.
That's awesome. And so, we've sort of briefly said that you did sort of about 20 years with Ocean City,
Hmm.
and that now you've I don't know whether you like transitioned into like the dispatcher role, or you sort of like officially retired and then kind of took this on
Oh,
as like
so
a secondary
that's
gig.
actually, so that's part of my story, and
Mm-hmm.
like when I share, in my mental health struggles. So I ended up as a dispatcher out of injury, not out of
Okay.
retirement.
Okay.
Um, so let me I'll go back in time a little bit because it helps
Okay.
make
Yeah.
it all it'll help
Yeah.
it
Of
all make
course.
sense. So in October of 2016, I was working a special event on a bicycle, and
Mm-hmm.
I for lack of better words, fell over the handlebars after my bike tire got caught between two pieces of concrete,
Oh
and
no.
I landed on my left knee. And what I came and I didn't realize it at the time. Um, I thought I just had a little road rash and I was okay and I could just keep working. Um, so I iced it. I tried to stay off it for a little bit, and then 2 hours later, my leg just kind of locked, and I
Mm,
was like, oh, I guess I now I need to go to the hospital.
yeah.
So my wife took me over to the hospital. What we came to find out is that I had a tear in my patella tendon. So I had surgery 3 weeks later to fix it. And to this day, my knee is fine, but I have nerve damage from either the fall, the surgery, the immobilization. Something nobody knows where it came from, but I have nerve
Yeah.
damage, and as a result of nerve damage, my left foot burns all the time. So I don't wear shoes a whole lot,
Yeah.
just because I can't take the compression on the top of my foot. That's what
Yeah.
actually ended my police career,
Oh
was
my
that I can't
goodness.
wear shoes anymore. But I mean, I shouldn't have to wear shoes, right? Because I work in a beach town. I should be able to just be a cop in flip flops, right? Um,
Yeah, I'll bring you over some good old Aussie thongs. It's all right.
right. So listen, coming up to that point that I get hurt,
Mm,
I wasn't in the greatest headspace. And
okay.
when I say that, it's for a couple different reasons, and I think most first responders would probably understand some of these if you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to guess some of them are going to resonate with other people. Number one, I
Mm-hmm.
worked like a lot, like
Mm, that
that entire
happens.
summer I was working 6 nights a week. And in June of 2016, I told my wife that I didn't want to do this anymore.
Mm,
And she was very supportive. She was like, "You can't quit tomorrow, but um, we'll figure out a way to get you out before the summer of 17." I just
mm-hmm.
didn't get there.
Yeah.
I got hurt, and then had to go through the rehab process and then the workers' comp process. So that took a while.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In addition to that, not only was I working like these 60-hour weeks in the summertime in our busy season, but I was doing it in the wintertime too, when all these polygraphs were going on.
Mm,
And um, I was doing a lot of polygraphs,
yeah.
and a lot of people don't maybe understand what that means. And every time I would sit down with somebody to do a polygraph test, that's 4 hours that just
Yeah.
devoted to that test. And then I got to write a report out of that. And I was doing between 8 and 10 polygraphs a week. So do the math. Um,
Yeah.
so when you're looking at 4 hours plus a report, and then I'd always want to come into the next week clean where I don't have a bunch of reports, I was working a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and then uh, my, I mean, I'll talk about alcohol. And so in college, I mean, everybody drinks in college. And then when you get on the job in law enforcement, that is the way that we celebrate. And
Oh yeah.
it is the way that we
Celebrate,
and
commiserate,
right. It is
survive,
ev-
cope, exist, all
right.
of the
Every
things.
every 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 kind of good and bad event in our
Yeah.
lives can be uh right celebrated with alcohol. And I that was the only coping mechanism that I knew, and that is what I really leaned into a lot. Like I thought I was just having a good time, and I mean it
Mm,
wasn't odd, for what 15 plus years that I would just black out from a night of drinking, and I'm just like, oh, I just had too much fun.
yeah.
I never really evaluated my relationship with alcohol, and I've heard friends of mine say this now,
Mm,
and in all the years that I drank, I guess I never really got good at it because I always black out, wake up with a terrible hangover, um,
yeah.
and just start all over again. Essentially,
Yeah.
I was like on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So the thing that I would do is that I would drink, and I started to really lean into that harder and harder to the point where like 3 to 4 nights a week, I would be blacked out and I would end up on the couch and I would wake up in the morning and not know how I got there.
Mm,
Uh, and this is towards like right after I got hurt. Um, So if you couple in all those hours, you couple in the alcohol, you couple in that I had a really, really terrible relationship with my immediate supervisor. Um, very, very toxic is I mean, that's just the best way I can put it. And then I didn't realize when I was getting into the polygraph world some of the things that I was going to hear. And I started to hear things. People were telling me things that had happened to them throughout their life. In my first
Mm.
10 tests, I had a young man tell me that he had been molested for 6 years by by a neighborhood neighbor, and he had never told that to anybody. And the reason that it came out is because he didn't do very well in the sex crime section. And
Mm.
so, you know, we're working through it, but he has to disclose a good amount of things that have happened to him that are incredibly uncomfortable for him. And I
Yeah.
started to take that kind of stuff on. Um, and then I would also hear some of the terrible things that our applicants would come through and like what they had done to other people. And that's the stuff that really affected me. It wasn't like, hey, I broke into this place one time or I stole this from the Walmart. That's not the stuff that affected me. The stuff that affected me was the stuff where people were doing things to other people. And I just started to take it on, and it wasn't uncommon for me at that point that I would come home and feel so disgusted by what I had heard that I would put my bag down and I would grab 2 beers and I would go take a shower uh, every single night. And
Yeah.
again, leaning into booze just a little too hard at this point. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. Um, so I go through rehab for about 2 years for my knee,
Mm.
and my nerve never regenerates, so it never gets better. They keep saying that it's going to get better. And between the 2 and 3 year mark, I had kind of made my peace like, hey, I'm not going to be a cop anymore. But my agency in my town hadn't come to the same conclusion. I go to my workers' comp hearing, and that was in the summer of 2019. And when they start rating me as a disability, I'm like, all right, okay, so now we're finally going to get a decision, and we're finally, you know, let's transition me into something else. And that still
Yeah.
didn't happen. So at this point, and you're talking about a 3 year period
Mm.
where I'm doing everything that I can
Yeah.
to get back. And I mean, look, I was a high school athlete. I was a college athlete. I understood like the whole goal is to get better, to get strong, to get back to whatever your job is. And I just couldn't. This is the only thing that I couldn't come back from. When you're at home, when you've worked all those hours every single week, and now all of a sudden that's gone, and you're just home alone with your thoughts,
Time to think.
uh,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really challenging because you don't have nice thoughts at that point. Um, and I will tell you that in 2017, 2018, that's when the drinking really, really, really amped up. Um, and the idea of taking my own life actually came to me, and it started almost like kind of a whisper, and then it became that it was pretty regular, and it was almost like being hit on the head with a hammer. Like, hey, it's time now. It's time. To the point where I had a plan, but I didn't have a day necessarily picked out, and I didn't know what to do. I was terrified at this point because I was the person that had anytime there had been somebody with like a mental health issue or something like that where I was the one that got called, and I was the one that always dealt with that person. And the first two questions out of my mouth were, are you thinking about killing yourself, and do you have a plan? And if your answer was yes to both of those, okay, you're serious, and there's something that we need to do. Well, what am I supposed to do? Because I now have those answers of yes, and who can I tell? Because I damn sure can't tell my employer. Um, you know that not only is there something wrong with my knee, but now there's something wrong with my head. Uh, and again, there's an enormous stigma that still over the idea of seeking help. What actually convinced me to actually say those words, that I need help,
Mm-hmm.
was we had a local police officer kill himself. And at the time, he had 27 years on the job. And I had actually worked with him in Salisbury City in the early 2000s. And that was in late 2018. And so I go to his funeral. I see the way that it rocked the city of Salisbury. It rocks the Salisbury Police Department, and they're still feeling it to this day. And here we are 6 years later, and that's what made me tell my wife, like, hey, I'm having these thoughts, like I don't know what to do. And so we get on the phone with our family doctor. So, but I wasn't telling anybody else. My wife
Mm-hmm.
knew, and my doctor knew, and that's it. And some of the medications that I was on needed to be modified. Um, I did not. I think Amy, my wife, had. I mean, she knew I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't telling that to my doctor. And listen, in my rational mind here, I know that the drugs that I was on and mixing them with alcohol is not a good decision, but I was not in a rational mind at that point. If you fast forward like another 9 months, um, my wife confronts me after a particularly wild evening, where she actually videotapes me, and what I was acting like when I was drunk. And the next day, she just says, "We need to talk." And she shows me the videos. And when I talk about it now, I want everybody to understand how deeply embarrassing that is, and like shameful, and that I'm carrying that around. This person that I love and respect most in the world is like, yo, uh, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so at that point, I will share. I had stopped drinking a couple times, and I would like stop for a day, or I would stop for like a week, or I would stop for a month. Well, at this point, I had stopped for 6 weeks, and then we had a little vacation. We had a staycation with some of our friends. So there was like 10 people. We were on a house for 2 days, and I tied it on. Um,
Yeah.
I can't even I know I don't remember going to bed either night. I don't remember dinner either night. And that's when she confronts me when we're driving home, like, "Hey, dude, you're a mess." And I I did not make a decision that day where I was like, "All right, it's time to get sober." It was like, I don't ever want to have this conversation again.
Yeah.
So in order for me to not have this conversation again, I'm just not going to drink today. And what I have done is, I just kind of made that decision every other day since. And then you start to string a couple days together and make a week. You string a couple weeks together and make a month. Well, next Tuesday, it'll be 5 years since I've had a drink.
Wow.
And that was the thing. That was my, most people in recovery will tell you that there's a rock bottom. Well, I just shared my rock bottom. That,
Mm-hmm.
is as bad as all these other things that were going on. It took that to
Yeah.
shake me to the point where it was like, all right, it's time. I'm doing this for me. Uh, Within a couple days of that, I go to a yoga studio for the first time, and I cannot to this day explain to you why. Uh, I had thought about it for a while,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I had always talked myself out of it because I am a former offensive lineman in football. I am 6'4" and
Yeah.
260 pounds,
You're
and
too
all I'm
manly for yoga, Vance.
well, all I'm gonna say is, listen, I when I go to a yoga studio, I stand out. And so I went, and I loved it. And then I just started
Yeah.
going like 3 and 4 times a week. And within the first month of doing that, I told my wife, I came home and I said, I'm going to teach this to cops and firefighters. I didn't, I just kind of had this vision of doing it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do whatever it takes for me to do that, which meant I did my 200 hour And look, I don't do anything a little bit. So when I'm in, I'm in. And it was like 6 months into a regular yoga practice that I get into my 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Mm-hmm.
And it's since then I've just tried to teach as many classes as possible. Um, so now, I really want to teach this population of first responders and, veterans and correctional workers and every people that are like me that work in these high stress environments that, are doing it for careers. So they have all this cumulative stress that
Yeah.
maybe they don't even understand that they're carrying around,
Yeah.
and then add into that whatever happened to them before they got into this career, from upbringing and things like that.
Yeah.
And if you don't face it at some point, uh, it's going to come out in an ugly way. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my why. That's why I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to teach yoga, uh, and that's the way that I can start to lower numbers as far as suicide goes for first responders.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that has morphed into is uh, I've started teaching things about just general wellness. Like we don't sleep very well. I'm gonna do a training at the end of this month all about why therapy is not a dirty word. And when I share my story publicly, I always tell people like, look, I talk to a therapist every week, and I will continue to do that because that's an act of self care for me.
Mm-hmm.
When people are like, well, I can't take medicine because then people will think I'm crazy. Listen, do you have any idea how much calmer I am now that I'm on meds? So I take a pill every single day. I go to therapy every week. I do yoga regular. Um, I do. So the one that everybody kind of looks sideways at me for is at least once a week. I do cold plunges too,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
where jumping in like 46-degree water and just sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But it regulates your central nervous system, and you got to befriend that. So just all these different ways that I have now understood these coping mechanisms, these ways that I can take care of myself that have nothing to do with booze.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal for me.
Understandable. You just shared like a whole lot there, and I really and I really want to honor that because
Yeah, yeah,
first of all, just thank you for you know your honesty and your authenticity, and I know it's something that you obviously, like you said, you kind of give presentations and mental health and wellness, and so it is something that you probably discuss a lot. But having done this podcast for over 12 months now, and speaking with lots of people in the first responder community, I know there are days where it's going to be harder to share the fact that you had suicidal ideation, to share about your quote unquote rock bottom and all that kind of thing. So I just want to say thank you for taking the
yeah,
time to share that with
yeah.
me, and for trusting me and our audience with it, because
Oh, 100%. If I don't
it's
if I don't
yeah.
share, and if I don't talk
Yeah.
about where I was,
Yeah.
um, I think that's where we fail in this first
Mm,
responder world right now, because we
absolutely.
don't talk about it. And look, I'm not defined by that rock bottom.
Mm,
I came up the other side, and
yeah.
so can others. And
Yeah.
so if I can reach down in the hole and help someone else get up out of it, that's what it's all about at this point.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's basically the premise for me, putting this kind of thing and having these conversations. It's so that we can put it out into the atmosphere, and if just one person listens and goes, oh shit, like that's I can take something from that, I can learn something from that. He could be talking about me, or she could be
Yeah,
talking about me
yeah,
right now. And I think there is so much power in speaking out and sharing our stories and sharing our truth, and I sort of, I phrase it, and it's probably a little crass, but I refer to it as like it's sharing our shit. like
Yeah.
laying it out there for, if you are comfortable, if you are that kind of person where you are comfortable sharing, like intimate details of our lives. And it's, there are parts of my life that I share on here. There are parts of my life that I'm not in a place where I'm ready to, and that's okay. And one part of like the aspect of my life is like I'm the daughter of a father who completed suicide, and that's something that
Oh,
I talk about on this forum because I'm in a place where I'm comfortable about it.
okay.
And it's also part of my why. It's part of, and he wasn't in law enforcement, but it shaped part of my law enforcement career because I had to attend suicides. I had to,
Yes.
attend and speak with people who, were really struggling in that place. I worked on a suicide prevention and crisis counseling hotline here in Boston when I came over here. Part of my why. So there are so
Hmm.
many different things that there's people like you and me who are comfortable and are in a place where we can talk about it and we want to talk about it and we want to share about it, because I want to say, hey, I'm the result of someone making a different choice to what you made.
Right. Right.
And I want to, and just
But if we,
to give a little bit of context to it.
but no, listen, I can't imagine the pain that you went through. And kudos to you for taking that and making that someone else's strength. Because you sharing
I
that
appreciate that.
and then
Mm-hmm.
somebody else being like, me too,
Yeah.
you just made a lifelong connection.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. Um,
Yeah.
so that's, so where I think we fail is that we don't want to talk about it. And if we're not going to talk about it, if we're not going to normalize it, that people
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to keep coming forward. And unfortunately, they don't know what to do with this emotional pain,
Yeah.
and they come to this awful decision to eat their gun.
Yeah.
And I mean, come on, there
Yeah.
really are other ways that we can handle this, and I just think that we need to be more welcoming in how we're doing this and how we approach that. That if someone says, oh well, my head's a little messed up, that our first instinct isn't to take their gun and badge and send them home to be alone by themselves.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it
And
just there just needs to be some other ways to handle this.
yeah. And like you're saying, it's, being in law enforcement, it's not like part of our job is to shove our feelings down so we can perform in the moment and be what other people need us to be. So that is part of our role, and we all understand that. But we're kind of taught that and we're shown that, but then we're not taught how to unpack it. We're not taught how to cope with it.
Mm-mm.
And society at large, not just the first responder community, society at large is scared of the word suicide because it scares us, because it can be quote unquote, sometimes, yeah, that person was struggling, we see it coming. It can be completely shocking and sudden and complete what the fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that is the thing that scares people. And because of that stupid notion of like, oh, well, if you say it, you're going to put it in their head. Well, that's
Right. Right.
fucking the most
Not true.
inaccurate thing I've ever heard of.
Right.
Exactly.
I
But,
can tell you
oh,
I can tell you that if so I was visibly mad for a couple years. And
mhm.
if someone would have like acknowledged that, and then where I get to this point of actually having those thoughts, if somebody had come to me and been like, are you thinking about taking your life?
Mhm.
I I would have finally felt like I'm seen, like somebody gets it. And
Yeah.
I probably would have been like, oh my God, I am, and I don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're not ever putting it in somebody's head. But if that
No.
is a thought that you think someone else is, um, certainly ask them the question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think as well, and obviously it sort of more from like a personal perspective, but I know it from like an observational one. Like I spent most of my career working with, guys who had like 15, 20 years on the job, and I feel like a lot of men, and not all men, but a lot of men, when they are struggling mentally, emotionally, psychologically, it manifests in anger, in aggression, in that kind of outward fuck you sort of kind of like attitude or just like aura that they put out there, because they are battling internally. And I've seen it so many times, and so many times that the angriest men are the ones that you
Yeah.
find out a little bit later, they're like, oh yeah, like they did not know how to cope with the
Mm-mm.
feelings that they were experiencing, and the permission structure
Right.
has not been there for so
Right.
long, and the cultural stigma of speaking up, and you know, and even in terms from like being a female, like in a male dominated profession, I mean, fuck me, you never wanted to speak up and say that you were struggling either, because
Mm-mm.
then you are exactly what they always thought that you were, if that makes sense, you
I
know. So
mean, listen,
that permission structure to speak out.
I mean, number one, just being a guy, I mean, I was taught from a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
high school, college, boys don't cry. Boys don't show emotions. And then when you get into law enforcement and the idea that you need to be in control of a scene whenever you get there, okay, well, I'm in control.
Mm-hmm.
That means all this stuff that I don't want to feel, we just need to shove it down. Uh, and every time that happens, we get imprinted with some, whatever that critical incident was, whatever that trauma was. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just all first responders are going to just see those things on a regular basis, and normal people don't
Mm-hmm.
see that kind of stuff, and we're not robots. At some point, you have to do work to get rid of that stuff, to get it off of you, to get it out of you. And again, if you don't take care of it, it will take care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And may I say, in the story, not even just a story, like your experience, like kudos to your wife, because, you know, it sounds like for 20 years you worked tirelessly, and, you know, obviously like provided well, and I don't know what realm or anything that she's in, but it's it's hard being married to a first responder sometimes,
Hmm.
and you can spend a lot of your time walking on eggshells.
Hmm.
And to be able to have that clear line of communication, especially like if you're saying, you know, you really kind of lent hard into that drinking, and if you're working 70, 80 plus hours a week, when you are home, you're blacking out drunk. I can't
Yep.
see that fostering great relationships.
You'd be,
And for
you'd be
her
right. It's
to,
not,
yeah,
if I wrote a relationship book, that is not those are not my
exactly.
suggestions.
I know, right? And but and you know, obviously you guys have been together like a long time, so you know, she obviously has you back, but
Mm.
it's
Yep.
scary. No matter how long you've been with someone, it's scary to confront your partner with severe concerns about them. It really,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
really is. And yeah, like even, you know, my hubby's a firefighter. I was a cop. We sort of, I think, exist and operate on you know, a certain level that other people in that realm sort of get. Like, you know, we know when shit's serious, and we know when it's not. We know when to you know, allow a little bit of grace and let something go through to the keeper, and not just pick a fucking fight for the sake of it.
Right. Right.
But you know, alternatively, we have to have that open level of communication, and sometimes he'll turn around and be like, "Do you think I'm drinking too much right now?" And I'm, you
Hmm.
know, and I'll have that question, and he's just like, you know, I just want to make sure I'm keeping it in check. And it's normally like a summer thing, or a, you know, we go home to Australia, so Australia has pretty big drinking culture, and you know I like tend to drink a lot more when I'm back home and all that kind of thing, and so we have that conversation of like, I might I might lay off for a little bit, and it's
Okay.
just cool, no worries. We'll just, you know, basically quietly and silently support you in that endeavor. But for your wife to really reach that point of not
Yeah.
only having those concerns, but confronting you with it. Like, I have all the respect in the world for that, because she,
Well,
you know,
I will
effectively saved you in
100%
that
pass that
instance.
along to her. And I do need to, I want to share something else. And it was,
Hmm.
um, I was like 2 years into recovery, and I
Hmm.
did a podcast, and it was all about, folks that had alcohol, not necessarily first responders, just,
Yep.
people in general.
Hmm.
And I shared that story, and, the two hosts were like, wow, your wife really took a risk. And I had never really thought of it that way, just
Mm.
because of the relationship that we have. And, when someone's being serious about, like, oh, well, this is really a problem, that I'm going
Yeah.
to listen to it. Um, and it wasn't until that point that I even considered, like, what if that went the other way? What if it was like, I don't have a problem, you have a problem? And I mean,
Yeah.
like, that really could have, had a huge rift in the, relationship.
Hmm.
So, I had never considered that it could go that way, but, yeah, she took an enormous risk.
Hmm. Yeah. But I think as first responders, having that support structure,
Yeah.
is so incredibly important. And really, like, I love how you were like, I'm former athlete and 6'4", and we might sort of describe you as like a mountain of a man sort of thing. And you're like, something was drawing you into that yoga studio, and it sort of really sounds like that crossover period from where you made that choice to stop drinking, and
Yeah.
then yoga came into your life, and how you discussed the fact that you didn't really have any other coping skills,
Mm.
strategies, mechanisms, and that the one crutch that you had was a maladaptive one in the wrong hands, or to excess, that was your drinking, and that you found this completely healthy adaptive one that seems like it's just made such a wonderful positive impact in your life, and now, even in terms of like what you are wanting to offer back to the community through your own experiences and benefit, and then turning something into this, and founding Yoga Rescue.
Hmm. I mean, I guess, just coming from this world, uh, coming from the public safety world in general, um,
Hmm.
now I just want to make sure that the rest of them get through their career.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it comes from. That I want
Hmm.
to, I wish it was more widely accepted, and I wish, people didn't look at me like I was some sort of weirdo, because I'm into yoga, and I'm like, yo, it's not what you think. I swear, it's like some
No.
poses, it's some breathing. I'm gonna put some music on,
Yeah.
but it is not whatever is in your head that you think that it's going to be. I swear.
No, I've got a really good girlfriend back home who has sort of gone through like a similar path in terms of finding yoga, falling in love, and then becoming a certified instructor, and then she got her trauma certification. And
Mhm.
I've interviewed both her and her friend on this podcast, and talking about it, and it's slowly finding its way when people are like that little bit open to it, it
Right.
definitely, and
Right.
they're doing it like a emergency services like foundation is sponsoring classes like for veterans and first responders that these two girls are putting on for that community, and it just keeps ticking along, it keeps growing. And so I think it's a movement. It might be like a very slow one, but
I,
I think it's getting into
I
the
used to
ether a
get,
little bit.
I used to take it kind of personal, and I used to be like, I don't understand why you got, I mean, it's like life changing, and why aren't you guys into it? And, um, listen, the first responder world does not do the most, um, I don't feel like we're on the progressive cutting edge of anything, unless
Yeah.
it's unless it's like tactics and weapons. And,
Yeah.
it's already bad enough that I want to talk about feelings, and, so, um, I guess that's, look, when they're ready, I'm ready. So that's the approach
Yeah.
I take now.
Yeah. a term like my husband always says, and like we live up in Boston, and he's always like, you got to remember, he's like, half the people you're talking about, they're like stubborn Irish assholes, and I'm like,
Mm, there it
that's
is.
kind of like, yeah, I think it kind of explains, the first responder community in
Mm,
a lot of ways,
right.
but
And is I
uh,
mean, and that is in the most loving of terms possible. But yes, that is my
he's not
that
backwards
is
in coming forwards. Is
that
the
is
reason I
that is
married him.
100% my people. So, mm,
Exactly. And so yeah, so talk to me. Oh, actually, that there is one thing that I wanted to ask, and I think
sure
it
thing.
came from either another interview that I listened to, or something that I read, and you were like, you explained, and like to quote you, was like that yoga calmed the storm within you.
Yeah.
And I loved the imagery that evokes with not only probably like your physical health, but your psychological health too. And I just, if you can sort of
So
speak to that a little bit
yeah,
for me.
for sure. So I all that stuff that I told you was kind of going on with me, the working too much, the boss that we didn't get along, the different things from polygraph interviews and then getting hurt and then, mix it in
Mm-hmm.
with the booze. I call it a storm. And the reason I call it a storm because I have this vision of like being on a ship and
Mm-hmm.
like rain, that rain by itself doesn't do anything to you. Wind by itself, thunder and lightning by itself. But then when you mix it all together, you have this incredibly rough seas, and your boat's bouncing, and you're probably bouncing, and maybe you get tossed off overboard.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing. So I used to believe that I actually could calm a storm, that I could
Mm-hmm.
like reach my hands out and I had that kind of power. And that's a type A personality right there. That's first responders. All right, so here's what yoga did. Yoga calmed me inside out. So if I calm myself down, if I can calm my
Mm-hmm.
my brain by using my breath and connecting my heart and brain back together again,
Mm-hmm.
my whole system starts to calm down and then storms pass. It's just a very interesting way to look at
Mm.
things. And it's just that yoga changed my vision of the world, like outwardly facing. And that,
Yep.
so that's the life changing part of it, that it actually settled my mind down that much. And it allowed me to get to a place that my brain could actually process through any of these traumas, any of these critical incidents, any of this stuff from like childhood,
Oh,
that I'm
sorry.
going back
Yeah.
through all this stuff. Now, there was a
Mm-hmm.
point that, I'm quitting the booze, I'm teaching yoga, um, but I wasn't addressing the root cause. So there is something that booze was covering up, right? And I wasn't addressing it at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I did a speech in early 2023, and I got comments that I came across as angry and bitter, and I'm like, wow, um, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And it's part of my story. I'm going to talk about some of the things and some of my feelings and my emotions, but that's not the way I want to come. And so I was upset, of course. And what it
Mm-hmm.
made me do is it made me take a really introspective look at myself. And that's what ultimately got me to go back to therapy. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a wonderful therapist in the past, but she didn't know much about the first responder world. And we would meet when I said so. So like if I was like, oh, I need you this week, we would meet, and then maybe it would be 2 months later and we'd meet again. So I mean, like I had dabbled in therapy before, but the lady I see
Mm-hmm.
now, it is serious, and I say that almost kind of jokingly. So when I first find her, and they only deal with first responders, they I got interviewed 3 separate times by the practice before they placed me with a therapist. And then when I meet her for the first time, she's like, okay, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we're going to meet. You just have a standing appointment until I say so. Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
I remember the first couple times going in with an agenda, like, all right, I want to talk about
Yeah.
this. And then like the next time I literally I
Bow.
show, and she actually jokes with me. She's like, you don't have to write notes down, right? You don't have to come in with an outline. But that was just me. That was, I gotta have
Mm.
stuff laid out, structured. And now we just talk,
Mm-hmm.
and she'll be like, "What's going on?" And I'll tell her what's going on, and then I don't know, it always it might go to something else, and it never goes where I think it's going to go. Um, but it's been incredibly helpful, and it's helped me lessen um, that anger burden. Like I don't want to be angry anymore, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
accept that. Um, but it's hard. It's work, and it takes me
100%.
kind of facing me, and that's the only way
Mm.
I'm going to get through it. And so I still meet with her weekly
Yep.
and do a lot of other stuff, wellness practice wise. But I'm a work in progress. I'm never going to be quote unquote fixed.
Oh, dude, I
But
think
I'm
we're
better than
all a
I
work in progress.
but I'm better than I was.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Like, kudos to you for not just going and how do I say it? Like, I don't want it to kind of come across as insulting to anyone, but as in like you were like, oh well, like I quit drinking. Like fucking where's my medal? Where's my
Right.
hero badge? Like I'm solved, I'm fixed. Like fucking yay me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of took you to kind of not only lean into yoga and stop drinking, but to kind of go like you said, like, oh, I had the realization that was masking a whole bunch of stuff for me, and like,
Right.
and there's the things that we see in our careers, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
all know we see the things that people don't want to know exists, and that is just part of our job. And like you said, not even to mention the things that we bring from childhood and our ACE scores and experiences and all that kind of thing, and then throw into it whatever happens during our career and our lack of coping skills. Like if we don't address the things that was getting masked, like you're saying, by your drinking or anything else, like you're still not going to get any better. Okay, you're not going to be getting blackout drunk and like insulting someone or destroying your career or anything like that, but kudos to you for not sticking your head in the sand like a lot of people do. And it is hard work. It is hard
Right.
work facing up to shit. It's hard facing up to stuff from our past. It's hard, and I can speak on it because I've done some of the same stuff in the last couple of years myself. Um, it's hard not to feel ashamed when you look back with a different lens of like perspective, age, experience, knowledge, and not be ashamed of the way that you handled things in the past, ashamed of the way that you you know reacted, any of those kind of things, or even just admitting to yourself like, oh yeah, that happened and I handled it in this way and I don't like the fact that it happened and I don't like the way that I handled it, and having to wrestle with that and
Right.
give your younger self grace, give your younger self acceptance and
Yeah.
compassion, and be like, okay, I would handle it very differently now, but you survived. Back
Yep.
then, you did what you needed to in the time, and you have to accept that, and that is hard. Some
Yeah,
days it is very
for
hard.
sure.
So it's, and like we were saying, for a man to also really delve deep, it is hard. So good for you for putting that work in and making yourself a better person, a better husband. I'm not sure if you have children, but probably a
No.
better father
Well,
for it. And
yes and no. Not like two-legged children. We have four-legged
uh,
children. We have
just
three of them.
just as important. They're relying on you, just as important.
Yep.
And so I believe that yoga rescue was sort of like formed? Was it 2021 that you
That's right.
became
So
certified, or yeah?
I finished my 200-hour training program in March of
Mm-hmm.
21. I started teaching studio classes. I knew what I wanted to do, so I formed the business.
Yep.
Um, and then I've been to a couple other like specialty yoga trainings, one through Warriors at Ease and
Mm-hmm.
one through Veterans Yoga Project. Both of those are yoga and meditation programs that were developed in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Since that point, I have I've also started my 300-hour, which is my advanced teacher training, and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
in that right now. I have
Yep.
probably another year until I finish that, and that is at
Yeah.
a place called Guiding Wellness Institute, and she is in
Okay.
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yep.
My most recent training, this is the one that's pretty special. Um, it's called iRest, and it stands for Integrative Restoration, and it is a
Mm-hmm.
10-step guided meditation that helps people sleep. So
Wow.
if they give me 30 minutes to actually guide them through this meditation, that 30 minutes, if they don't sleep very well, and most of the people that have any of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, they don't sleep very well.
Mm-hmm.
And 30 minutes of an iRest meditation will give them the benefits of 3 hours of actual like REM sleep. And it might actually allow them to rest at night because it starts to slow the mind down. So that's
I
what I've
think
really
I've
started to
I've
like.
heard of this. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
amazing.
special. And I'm fortunate in the fact that part of my 300 program, she was like, you have to go through iRest. So that was just part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, what's this going to be about? I don't know. I fight meditation. I really do. A friend of mine who's a firefighter, really dove deep into it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can just sit cross-legged on the floor and just not think. And he's like, yeah, that's not what it is. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying my best here.
Yeah.
I like the guided where somebody will talk
Yeah.
me through something, and I do
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that on Insight Timer when I need one, or I'll pull something up on YouTube when I need it. I like the fact that I can deliver it now for someone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And what I've started to do practice wise when I teach a class is I do like a 75-minute class, and that's not all movement. I'm not trying to scare people away, but it's
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes of movement, and then so you kind of get loosened up, get all the wiggles out, and then get still, and then I do the iRest meditation. So that's the final 30 minutes,
Yeah.
and I've gotten very good reviews on doing that.
I
So I'm
bet.
like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
stick. I'm gonna stick with that.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And it is like even I was speaking to a previous guest, Josh Grandinetti, who does like mindfulness for first responders with his
Okay.
organization, Foundation Fortified. And I've sort of like been working through like some of the courses and stuff that he offers, and it is so much effort to learn to sit in your silence. Like
Yes.
it is, and it's actually going through this has made me realize how uncomfortable I am in silence. I always have a podcast on, music playing, like there's always something. And then for me to sit, I'm just like, oh, this is harder than like it looks
Yeah.
and that it seems and all that kind of thing. So I can imagine that restorative part of what you're offering, and like the movement part, and then that does sound very divine. I will give you
And
that.
I am, yeah, and I am very much like you. If I'm doing something, I usually have music on or I have a
Yeah.
podcast, and this idea that so most of our lives we have been taught that when we are uncomfortable that we're supposed to do something about it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like move away from it or run away from it,
Yeah.
or maybe try to drink it away or eat it away or whatever. And there's a huge difference when you're uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just come to this acceptance of, well,
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable, and what's going on right now, why am I
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and being curious about
Mm-hmm.
it, what emotions and feelings can you just sit there and be with it.
Yeah.
That's when some change really starts to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is, it's weird to, you know, so like I also am studying psychology at the moment and sort of delve into all different kinds of things. And I've shared a couple of different, I do like little mini episodes called Mindfulness Mondays where I share sort of some like self-care strategies, specifically like for first responders. And one of the ones I shared was like deep diaphragmatic breathing.
Hmm.
And then the one just like earlier this week was like bilateral stimulation in terms of like the music, like the
Okay.
harmonizing music or that kind of thing, listening to. And it's even sort of like things like that, like it's really calming and soothing, but a lot of the time I still need that something else, or like that guided meditation or the guided mindfulness practice, because yeah, sitting in silence, it's just
Mm.
fucking, it's rough. maybe that speaks to a little bit more about what's going on inside my head
Right.
to the
It's because your mind. It's like what do I have to do to slow it down? You know, and a lot of people, it's uncomfortable for them
yeah,
to allow the mind to slow because
it is.
you know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to think, and that's not a thing. You know,
No.
you can slow it down, but you're never going to turn your mind off. And I think that you know
Yeah.
there's a lot of peace in accepting that that's not going to happen. But if you can just
Yeah.
focus on breathing really, really slow and really, really deep and
Hmm.
smooth and steady, it starts to slow your mind down.
Yeah,
And it's amazing how that
absolutely.
works.
And there's actually something that I just sort of really thought about, that something like with your practice especially, and I think you would know, having, you know, being in and existing in this first responder mental health and wellness realm, is that so many people aren't prepared for retirement.
Hmm.
They have not unpacked their shit. And
Right.
then, and it's actually like, it's something I said to my husband a few weeks ago, and I'm like, there are a couple of non-negotiables, and one of them is when you are like on that track of like getting, you know, doing the wind down to retirement, I'm like, go talk to someone. I'm like, that is non-negotiable, because I'm like,
Yeah, I'm
we
with
are
you.
not stepping into your retirement
Right.
when you have not unpacked stuff. And I think that that sort of restorative thing that you offer, I think would be really good in terms of giving them that space to kind of slowly like unpack it, if they're in like the right place to be doing it, and to like, you know, actually see whether they have stuff that is bothering them, and then can
Right.
go and find the appropriate care. Because I, we don't think about it, and then all of a sudden it happens, and you're like, holy
Right.
shit, now I'm
Because
struggling.
you know, and that's now as I come up on my retirement, and I'm 6 months out at this point.
Mhm.
And if I 6 months from now was in the same headspace that I was in 5 years ago, I don't know what would happen to me because I was so invested in that job. I was so
Mhm.
invested in that uniform, and then that went away, and that kind of crumbled my world.
Yeah.
And you know, that's my fear now, that people aren't recognizing that there's a person behind that uniform, and that we got to address that person. And you know, that job's not always going to be there, and as soon as you leave, there is going to be somebody else that fills your position. You know, and I mean that's not a comfortable thing to talk about, but it is, and it's natural that you go, and after you serve this career, that you can go do something else. And you know, you don't have to stay in this career for 40 and 50 years, because that's not necessarily healthy either.
Yeah.
So you know, the one of the huge things for me is I want to teach people while they're still in the job these wellness practices that'll keep them
Mhm.
through the job and well beyond.
Yeah.
Because now I don't know what it is for firefighters, but I can tell you the life expectancy for a police officer is 20 years diminished from like the regular population,
Mhm.
and it's 5 years beyond their retirement. That's usually the life
Yeah.
expectancy. So I am I did not work 25 years in public safety to get 5 years out of it. That, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I wish I would have taken better care of myself. But the fact of the matter is, I found it when I found it. And now if I can share that with other people, that's certainly what I'm going to do.
Yeah, no, and it's yeah, I completely understand, and I'm just got news like just last week, like a lovely guy that I worked with in the police force back home. He passed away, and yeah, barely got to enjoy his retirement and got struck down by illness, and it's just yeah, it's so and I'm sort of in a similar mindset with my husband is about to turn 55 at the end of this month.
Okay.
And so I am just like a sponge and taking in all of the knowledge that I learned from doing things like this, from my psychology studies, from my coaching, from the research, from like everything that I do. And I'm just trying to get it to make him as well as he possibly can be for the time that he's still in the job, and to prepare for the and set ourselves up for the time that he's not in that job anymore. And it's like, yeah, like we like you said, we only know things when we know it.
Right.
But I said to him, I'm like, I am learning, like, please let us utilize all of the knowledge that I am coming into. And I
Right.
am, I'm like a vitamin regime, like, giving him sort of different mechanisms to be able to switch out of that stress response and into the parasympathetic nervous system to try to like help him calm his system down to affect, better sleeping practices, like all of that things. And, for firefighters, like, they work 24, 30,
Mm-hmm.
36-hour shifts. Like it's crazy. But that, again, that affects you so much. So it's just trying to strike that balance and just do the best that we can with the knowledge that we are gaining now. So
Agree.
I,
Agree.
yeah, really understand where you're coming from in that. And now if you are happy to, I would love to hear about your connection. And from what I understand, it's like a new position, being a guide with the Boulder Crest Foundation.
Yeah. So this has been pretty recent. I am let's say a guide trainee. I still got my training wheels on. But let me tell you a little bit about Boulder Crest. So Boulder Crest has been around for about 10 years. And my experience with it started about 3 years ago. And I saw their CEO speak in at the FOP Wellness Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about post traumatic growth, and I had never heard that term before, and I didn't necessarily know what it was. So what Boulder Crest is doing is they have adapted this program called Struggle Well, which they started with military folks. Now they're getting into the first responder world. They can deliver this Struggle Well program as a 1 day, a 2 day, or a 5 day program. It's
Mm-hmm.
completely free of charge, and it teaches the steps of post traumatic growth. And so I went to it for the first time in March, a couple months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I was approached by the lead guide after that, asking me if I was thinking that I wanted to teach it as well. And it was because of, I had been in this and definitely like a negative spiral, but then I had come up the other side. And how did I get there? So they want folks that are walking that path, and then they can take other people,
Mm-hmm.
they can guide other people on their path of post traumatic growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, in the last couple months, I have been through a train the trainer program for them. I have started to teach it along with a lead guide. I will teach a couple more times before I'm, signed off on as a, for real. It's almost like in the police world, it's almost like going through an FTO process where I have a field
Yeah.
trainer that's like evaluating me and telling me, all right, well, now you can go, or we got to work on some stuff. So I got to do at least two
Yeah.
more times with another lead guide. But what a fabulous organization, and they're expanding. There's a large population of them up in your area. And if
Mm-hmm.
you want to get in contact, the guy's name is Rob Schwartz, and he has the entire state of Massachusetts So I can certainly put you
Oh,
in touch with
wow.
him if you want to either interview
Yeah, I'd
him
love to hear
to
that.
talk, or if
Mm-hmm.
if there's people that are listening that are up in that area and they want to do a struggle well program, I can
Yeah.
certainly put them in touch. And it is amazing. And so I've gotten to teach now twice, and which is not a ton, but in the classes that I attended, so I attended three separate classes, and then I go to my train the trainer, and now I've taught two, and
Mm.
that's all in the
Yep.
last 8 months.
Wow.
um, yeah, it's a lot. When I look back at it like that, I'm like, oh wow, I've done a lot. I've done a lot, and I've done it
It's
quick.
rather impressive. Yeah.
Again, my wife laughs at me. I don't do anything a little bit. When I'm in, I'm
No,
in.
it doesn't sound like it. Yeah.
Uh, but it's fascinating
Yeah.
to every police class I've ever been. Everybody's very buttoned up and nobody wants to talk.
Mm.
And in these classes, I'm hearing people share things that have happened like throughout their career or maybe before they ever got into the
Mm-hmm.
career, or some of the significant struggles that they've had, and they're openly sharing it with other people in
Yeah.
the class just because of the bonds that they have. And it's inspirational, really.
Yeah.
And I'm ecstatic to be a part of it.
No, it sounds so transformative in that way. And the reason that I first heard about them is a lovely guy that has been a former guest, and I just sort of, I think, I don't even know, I'm trying to think how we met. It might have been through the Overwatch Collective. Travis Gribble from, he's
Oh, I know.
in the
Yep, I know his
arena.
name. I've
Yeah.
never met him face to face, but I know his name.
Yeah, I've never had the pleasure of meeting him face to face either, and I hope to one day. But he I was like follow him on social media, and he went, and I think he did the 5 day class like probably a few months ago now, and
Hmm.
just the way that he spoke about it and how transformative of an experience it was for him. I think I started following them as a result of that, and I was looking on like their website in preparation for our conversation today, and from what I saw, it like they've got 3 different locations. It was like one in Virginia,
They do.
Arizona, and
They
Texas as well,
so
or
the
they're like
ori- so
transitioning one in.
yeah, the original one was in Bluemont, Virginia, which is like the western side of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
That was where it all started in
Okay.
2013, and
Mm-hmm.
that was all military vets that they were
Okay.
doing this Warrior Path program that was like a
Mm-hmm.
7-day program at the time. At this
Okay.
point, they have bought property in Arizona. I can't remember exactly which city it's in, and then they
Okay.
just bought in the last year this place called Eagle Oak Retreat, and that is Boulder Crest's newest, and that's in Texas,
Okay.
and they're
Yep.
doing all exclusively Struggle Well Experience, which is a 5-day
Mm-hmm.
program for first responders. And listen,
Yep.
anybody can apply to attend.
Mm-hmm.
And if you apply to attend, it would be free of charge if you're accepted. And they cover your travel, they cover getting you there, they cover getting you
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
Um,
because they're a 501(c)(3), aren't they?
yeah, yeah,
From what I saw as well, it looks like they have sort of not only just like the struggle well programs, which is obviously sort of uh, more focused towards like you're saying, the military, veteran, first responder community. Which, hey, anyone who wants to help that community is freaking awesome in my book. But it looked like they had sort of like family experience, or not experiences, like
yes.
family programs to help sort of like more of like an integrated care experience too,
Well,
which
so
also
the
speaks
really
nicely.
interesting part about what Boulder Crest is doing is, all right, so every class that I've ever been to is you go to this class for 4 days, 5 days, and then it's over.
Hmm.
You get a certificate, you pass a
Yeah.
test, you're certified, you're good. Boulder
Yep.
Crest is different. And the
Hmm.
whole idea is that they're teaching you these practices and things that you can integrate into your daily practice. And
Hmm.
so they want you to continue in the following weeks. And if you go through the Struggle Well experience, or if you go through Warrior Path, they tell you it's a 90-day program. It's just that the first 5 to 7 days are hosted there, but you're still
Right.
part of it when you leave.
Hmm.
So the whole idea is that they're integrating this, whatever they do in that 5 to 7 days, that you'll keep
Hmm.
going for the next 90.
Yeah.
And they actually have an app where anybody that's been through the Struggle Well program can be on the app. It's a closed app, but we can all
Yeah.
network with one another, and we can share
Yeah.
proud moments of our lives, and it's just it's nice, honestly.
No, that's wonderful. And I definitely think Travis mentioned like that aspect of it too, that it's like you're saying, like I think it's like anything, you have this like really like intense experience with people. And like you said, like everyone is sharing probably some really heavy shit, like,
Hmm.
traumatic experiences, suicidal attempts, potentially suicidal ideation, like all of the gambit that is bringing them to this place where they are struggling and they want to struggle well and struggle better. And to then be able to keep that support structure so that if someone is kind of not faltering, but like, falling off the path a little bit slightly, like, but someone else is doing better, to be like, to have that person to be able to reach out to, or like, like you're saying, a collection of people to be like, come on, mate, you've got
Hmm.
this. What do you need? Do you need to talk to one of us to really kind of reset yourself? Do you need to vent? Do you need us to clarify something for you? Like that support structure is just, it sounds like it's really imperative to the
It's phenomenal.
success of that program. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's phenomenal. I can't even believe I'm a part of it. When I saw the guys speak 3 years ago, I would have never fathomed that I'd be where I am at this
Mm-hmm.
point. Um,
No.
and I'm not trying to, like look too far into the future. I'm just happy to be where I am.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. I'm really happy to hear about your affiliation and involvement with them, and if you and or they are happy, we can put their website and stuff into the show notes if people
Oh,
are
that'd be great.
interested
That'd
or
be that'd be
feeling like they're struggling.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yep,
All right. Cool. More than
do
happy
that.
to do that. And obviously, if someone sort of wants a little bit more of a like a personal anecdote about sort of what it really is, are you open to people being able to contact you in
Yeah,
regards
yeah, yeah.
to?
You can
Yep.
put and if you want me to, I'll send you all my contact info
Yep.
afterwards, or
I
you can take
probably
it off
have
my
it, but yeah.
website or whatever you want. Phone number,
Yeah.
email. They can contact me through social media. I don't care. If you send me a message, I will answer you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
I don't keep it to yourself.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you for that, Vance. And sort of the last thing that I wanted to ask you about was your involvement with anyone sort of been on social media last, I think it's probably like 12-18 months. There's been this sort of like, I don't know if it's a movie or a documentary, PTSD 911.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And the lovely, who you know well, and I am organizing to speak with soon, Mr. Conrad Weaver,
Sure.
who is filmmaker, director, podcast host. I think he has a distinguished list of titles next to his name.
So my
And he, yeah,
my my
talk to me about
involvement,
that.
yeah, for sure. My involvement with it started. I think it was probably 3 years ago. I think it was the same wellness conference that I see Josh Goldberg speak at, and they were screening the movie there,
Hmm.
and I actually got to meet Conrad. And funny enough, Conrad is from Frederick, Maryland, which is about
Yeah.
3 hours away from Ocean City. So, I mean, I guess like Maryland people, we all we naturally float together, of course.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so that next summer, they were Conrad and a friend did this bike tour across the country. They started in Astoria, Oregon, and
Mm-hmm.
on bicycles went across the entire country. And it was something like 60 days. I think it took them 2 months to go all the way across the country. Well, they
Mm-hmm.
had picked Ocean City as their endpoint, like my hometown. So I had
Yeah.
actually reached out to him prior to that, and I was like, "Dude, you're coming to my town. Let me take care of this screening part." And he goes, "All right, it's
Yeah.
yours." So like we had a little. So when they got into Ocean City, we had a nice little welcome reception for him. We screened the movie at the Ocean City Convention Center the next night, and I got to meet some of the people that were actually in the film, and that started like all these other like friendships and networking and wonderful connections. And it all started because of this movie. So let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
So PTSD 911 is a documentary film about some folks that were suffering with some mental health issues in the first responder world.
Mm-hmm.
And it really follows three main characters, one of which is a dispatcher, one of which is a police officer, one of which is a firefighter. And
Mm-hmm.
they all had different levels. They all had different, they were all presenting in a different way, I should say, with different diagnoses, different medications that they're trying. Um, Alcohol was certainly a theme throughout there too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to resonate with any first responder, and I'm going to be honest, it's hard to watch at times, and especially for somebody like me that I kind of been in that dark place too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they're very open about talking about. Like, listen, this is where I was. This is what was going on, and some of them were currently going through it at those moments, and it's very real. It's very raw, but I think this is what we need to talk about. I think we
Mm-hmm.
need to acknowledge there's a problem, um, because when we acknowledge there's a problem, I think we start to look at solutions and resources.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem just can't be burying our head in the sand and being like, all right, well, we don't have a problem because I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Conrad and I have just kind of struck up a friendship, and
Mm-hmm.
I try to get him exposed to as many different places as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to host three different screenings,
Wow.
and I have attended quite a few others that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't involved in. But just I think a lot of him. I think a lot of the movie. So if there's any way that I can advertise for him or promote him, that's what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll see where it goes from here. We're actually going to watch it this afternoon. I'm currently attending a public safety wellness event in Cumberland, Maryland. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to watch the documentary this afternoon and probably have a little discussion panel afterwards about things that are working, things that are not, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
just thoughts on mental health.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I sort of was looking at it last night, and even I haven't I haven't seen the movie, but even the trailer like gets to you.
Hmm.
And I think when you and I connected, like a few weeks ago and sort of trying to set this up, I don't know if I did a bit of a deep dive stalk, and I think I ended up following, is it Matt? Is it
Yeah,
Fiorenza or
Fiorenza.
something like
Yep.
Fiorenza? Yeah. So I think I ended up following him, and then I was like, why is that bloke familiar? When I was watching the trailer last night,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's him. Um, and yeah, even in just the trailer, like, these three incredible people. It was a female dispatcher, the female police officer, and him as the firefighter. And it was, you can tell it's going to be heavy but important viewing.
Hmm.
I think it's probably how, and I'm speaking with Conrad next week, so I'll speak to him about trying to be able to watch it myself, because I think it's going to be a powerful
Yeah.
experience
Agree.
just to.
So you could actually you can purchase it on Amazon and you
Oh,
can
can
watch
you?
it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Yep.
you can do that. And then the other
Thank
idea
you.
is, like, if your husband's fire company wants to purchase it, and then they could actually host screenings up there. Or
Yeah, I
Conrad,
saw
listen,
something about that. Yep.
Conrad will come to you if there's a
Mm.
big get together. Like, he'll come up and he'll come to Massachusetts and he'll screen it if they have a place and stuff like
Yep.
that. Yeah, he's very willing to do stuff like that.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, I look forward to speaking with him next week. So yeah, so what, you can just kind of go on like Amazon Prime and
Yes, and so that was
hit
new this
purchase.
year that it actually got released on Amazon.
Oh,
That I
brilliant.
mean, and you can go through the PTSD 911 website and you can buy
Hmm.
it and buy a license, and then that's
Yeah,
just
that's what
more
I was seeing
expensive
last night.
doing it that way.
Yeah, yeah, but I think they like you were saying that, part of that purchasing, like the license and like the screening rights, is there is that, I think they call it like a toolkit that you
Right,
can get to be able to have these
right.
important conversations about mental health and wellness in the first responding community that are more than likely going to get sparked after viewing that film.
For sure. For sure.
All right.
But it's just great stuff to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, yeah, like considering we've just banged on about it for like the last 10 minutes, I'll pop the website in the show notes too. And so yeah, like if anyone's interested in checking it out, obviously, you know, Vance is a big proponent for it. And if after I watch it, yeah, I'll definitely share something about it, because I think it just all gets down to everything that we've been talking about, that sharing our stories, sharing our experiences, sharing our pain, so that someone else knows that if they are in the same position, that it's okay.
Yep.
That we all, or a lot of us, go through it, and there is nothing wrong with struggling. And all that you need to know is that support is out there in whatever way that suits you, whether that's yoga, whether it's therapy, whether it's coaching, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's deep diaphragmatic breathing, whether it's medication, whether it's EMDR. Like, the gambit is so
Right.
wide.
There's stuff out there. You just got to find your thing, honestly.
Yeah. And yeah, even like I spoke to a bloke a few weeks ago, and he is into plant-based medicine and has been healed through ayahuasca experiences. You know, like
I've
there
I've heard quite a bit about
is
this here recently.
yeah, and that's what I love. That's what I love, because it's something that, you know, I've spoken about previously, but and not to the first responder, but just the suicide factor. Like, you know, my dad completed suicide in the 80s. Like, mental health was not talked about.
Right.
Like, it just wasn't, you know, and that's part of the reason why, like, I worked on like the suicide crisis line when I first moved here, and why I talk about it now, because it's kind of like, if there was the help back then that there is now, and I know there's still stigma and everything attached to it, but you go, if there was that kind of help, how many people like my dad would have been more supported, would
Right.
have potentially made a different choice.
Sure.
And so many men that I interview on here, like, I couldn't even tell you like how many guests I've spoken to who have struggled with that ideation, even had that plan, perhaps made an attempt, and when they find that strength within themselves to say, I need help, and reach out for help
Hmm.
and get that help, and like you're saying, come through on the other side, it heals people like me.
Yep.
Because it's showing that it's possible. So
Hmm.
I think it's awesome. All right, Vance, I've taken up a lot of your time already today.
But
So I
this was so easy. Like, just you're very, 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 very easy to talk to, and it went
thank
fast for
you.
sure.
Oh, good. I'm so pleased to hear it. We like to finish these episodes off with two very quick last questions.
Okay, go ahead.
The name of the podcast is "I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness," and that comes about the darkness that, you know, we see in our line of work, and like you even sort of, you know, discussed in our conversation today. So I like to ask, what do you do in order to hold space for your darkness?
For me, um, the way for me is really to explore it in my own terms, which means usually typically yoga, and typically working through some stuff with my therapist. That's really how I can work through my own stuff, and that allows me to be a light for someone else when they're in their darkness.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, what can someone do in a supportive role, whether that's a spouse, a friend, a colleague, anything like that? What can someone do in order to support you best in holding space for that darkness?
To support, just their first responder. uh that's a tough question. And the reason I say that is because my wife is a badass, and like the fact that she, actually like called me out. I think a lot of people would be scared to do something like that, and so I think you have to find people that someone like myself would listen to. And there's only a very few amount of people that I would listen to that conversation from. And I think you just have to find those people,
Mm.
because that's how the connection happens. And that's the only way that help's going to happen is when that person recognizes that there's a problem. I hope that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Like, nah, having people in your life who you will listen to, regardless of whether it is good feedback, bad feedback, a shit
Right.
sandwich, the really harsh truth. No, that absolutely makes total sense. All right, Vance, thank you so much for your time today, sharing your experiences and everything you're involved in. I will pop all of your contact details, yoga rescues, website, all of the things in the show notes. So if anyone would like to get in touch with Vance or wants to find out more, check the show notes. Otherwise, reach out to either Vance or myself and we will organize,
Yeah.
or facilitate you guys getting in contact.
Thanks for a wonderful conversation, and everybody that's listening, thanks for taking the time to spend a little time with Erin and I.
No, it's been wonderful. Thanks again. All right, this has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.